Hi guys, while most reasonable people and even Tory MPs are welcoming Britain's re-entry to the Horizon Europe programme, some are less than impressed. One of those is former Brexit Party member and leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. But it gets worse. They also invited on former DUP leader and GB News contributor Arlene Foster to throw her 2 cents into the mix, and it just went downhill from there. Have a listen to some major Brexiteer butthurt over a little bit of Brexit being undone. Word of warning, it's pretty painful. Have a listen.
The whole of this Horizon programme is about funding the political aims and ambitions of the EU with its failing, low-growth, high-tax, high-regulation model. We should be nowhere near it. Michel Donelan this morning has admitted that we will be putting a lot more money, billions more in, than we get out. Why are we doing this?
Okay, why is the UK doing this? Why is it investing more than it's actually going to receive? Well, it's funny when you hear Brexiteers complaining about cost. We're talking about £2 billion in and £1 billion out. It's, as I said, it's strange to hear Brexiteers complaining about cost. Brexit is probably costing about £100 billion a year. Richard Tice doesn't have a problem with that. He doesn't have a problem with the cost Brexit has inflicted upon importers and exporters. But when it comes to science, well, he has a problem. Now, is it true? Yes, it's likely that the UK will invest £2 billion and get £1 billion in return. But that's not the point of this scheme. This is not the point of this program. It's about having access to the greatest minds in Europe. It's about having access to facilities around Europe. So researchers in Britain can access facilities in Europe, and likewise, researchers in Europe can access facilities in Britain. It's not about money. It's about access to facilities and the greatest minds.
We left the EU not to fund this stuff.
I remember when we did leave Brexit, one of the arguments on the Remain side was we are going to be left behind in the area of science, research and development, because it was quite good to be part of that team, to be part of that collaboration. Surely this is us taking the best bits of Brexit and not bad stuff.
It's completely the opposite. We're funding more than we're getting out. The Secretary of State has admitted it this morning. We're putting in about £2 billion a year. We'll be lucky if we get out £1 billion a year. They had an alternative called the Pioneer Programme, right, which would have been equally funded, so the scientists would have got more in that and we could have had more collaborations globally. We're on the global stage. We've got to stop thinking small, insular, bungling
Small and insular. But I thought that was part of Brexit. It was about cutting ourselves off from the rest of Europe and maybe the world in some sense. Brexiteers wanted a North Korea of Europe. This guy was part of a party that wanted a harder Brexit than Boris Johnson delivered. He actually wanted trade tariffs on trade between the UK and the European Union. Now, Boris Johnson delivered a tariff-free trade deal. There are still restrictions, but not to the extent that Richard Tice and his friend Nigel Farage wanted. They wanted a harder Brexit, one that would damage businesses in Britain even more.
Bureaucratic Brussels. We don't need them. We need to think global. Look, think about the AUKUS programme. This is the sort of positive, dynamic stuff we should be focusing on. Not failing logo.
AUKUS being the deal we did with Australia.
AUKUS was the...
It's about a submarine deal. That's it. A submarine deal. That's all you've got on the other side. Like, we shouldn't be part of a European project that helps researchers in Britain and Europe work together, allows researchers in Europe to access facilities in Britain and vice versa. No, we shouldn't be part of that because of a submarine deal we had with Australia.
The big submarine deal with Australia and the US. These are the great global opportunities. Right. The big trade deal in Asia. That's another opportunity.
What has a submarine deal got to do with research? How is that going to help universities in Britain and researchers in Britain?
That's what the scientists and the researchers should be focusing on.
Let's bring in Arlene Foster, who's with us this morning. Morning, Arlene. Thank you. Thank you.
It just goes from bad to worse here.
Thank you for joining. It's great to see you in the studio rather than down the line for a second.
Yes.
Now, the reason that we were excluded from this scheme for the past 3 years is because of the disagreement over the Northern Ireland Protocol. So what's your take on it? Is it a positive one?
Well, I think that is the real story, actually, because this was agreed in principle a long time ago, as Richard probably knows. But they held it over the UK as a bargaining chip. And
They didn't hold it over the UK as a bargaining chip. The reason why the UK was refused entry was down to trust. Now, I didn't fully agree with the European Union. I'm not a sycophant for the European Union. I think it's a good project. I think it's important, but it's not perfect. It's far from perfect. And I disagreed with it to a certain extent when it came to disallowing the UK to be part of the Horizon project or scheme over the Northern Ireland Protocol, because I think the two were separate. But I understood why the European Union was not allowing the UK to join over the Northern Ireland Protocol, because the Northern Ireland Protocol was an agreement, as part of the withdrawal agreement. It was an agreement between the UK and the EU, and the UK was planning to rip it up. The UK government, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, were saying about, we're going to trigger Article 16, we're going to throw the Northern Ireland Protocol in the bin, we're going to break international law in a limited and specific way. So you can understand why the European Union were like, well, we don't trust you anymore. That's what it was about. It was about trust. And that's why it changed when Rishi Sunak came in and he said, actually, I'd like to rebuild trust with the European Union. And that's how we got the Windsor Framework.
In terms of Northern Ireland. So the fact that they have now agreed to it, I think in terms of collaboration, I think that's why the scientists want back into it again. And I think Israel is actually part of Horizon 2020, so it's quite strange.
Yeah.
They're not.
Isn't that a good thing? It's like strange, okay, but isn't it a good thing that you have countries outside the European Union which are part of this project? Like, for example, there are researchers in Israel that can collaborate with Britain, and British researchers can collaborate with Israel. Isn't that a great thing? I don't see the problem here.
Not actually part of the European Union, but they're part of Horizon 2020. So I can understand it from a collaboration point of view. But the EU uses things like this to bang the UK over the head and say, oh.
No. I don't know why. It's a simple answer. No, they don't. It came down to trust. The UK government said, we're willing to break international law in a limited and specific way, and the EU went, okay, we have a problem with that.
Oh no, we're not allowing you into Horizon 2020 until you give us what we want in relation to the trade deal in Northern Ireland.
And is Richard right about them?
Horrific.
And is Richard right about the money? We're giving too much.
I think we are putting more money. We certainly have been in the past, putting more money in than we get out. The argument against that then is, that we get far more in relation to collaboration and working together, and that's why it's a good programme. But I think that's probably the jury's out on that as to whether we could have done it ourselves with the Pioneer programme.
But if you did it yourselves, you wouldn't have access to the research facilities in Europe. Like this argument that, well, the UK could have just invested the money themselves. Well, okay, we're talking about the Conservative Party. Okay, does anyone honestly believe that the Conservatives would invest massive amounts of money in research and development? Really? Is there anyone who would actually believe that? But even if they were, even if the UK government said, we're actually going to match the money, but the issue is not about money. The issue is about access to research, facilities and experts. Now, there's a big problem here that freedom of movement has not been reinstated. So, yes, the UK will be able to access, as part of this, research facilities and experts, but there will still be visa restrictions and there will still be problems with bringing people in abroad and UK scientists working abroad.
Programme which would have been more global. But the reason why scientists want into it is for collaboration.
But let's remember, most of these scientists were all Remainers.
Yes.
Many of them.
Oh my God. So the scientists were Remainers, and that's why they wanted this. Oh my God. Like, is this guy really that stupid, or is he just pretending to be stupid? Like, how can you come up with something like that? How can you actually say that, live on TV? Oh, well, the scientists were Ramoners and Remainers. I don't even know how to respond to this.
Want back in there. Don't be surprised. They wanted to be part of this huge bureaucratic framework.
But it's not about, oh my goodness. The scientists don't care about the bureaucracy. Why would they want to be part of something bureaucratic? They're interested in research and development. That's why they became scientists. I know for people like Richard Tice, it's just about money. Like, he's involved in property. He probably doesn't understand why would somebody study to become a scientist? You don't make loads of money. Like, perhaps his entire life is just about making money. But other people believe in creating something, doing something for the good of humanity. They're interested in something. They want to follow those interests. They have passions. And it's not about just making money. My God, this guy is pathetic. It's a sort of mediocrity that we have here. I don't even know how to respond to it anymore. It's pathetic. It's just... Does he actually believe the things he says? Or is he just saying it because he knows somebody is stupid enough to believe it? So the UK is rejoining. This is a good thing. It's good for researchers in Britain. It's good for researchers in Europe. It's good for facilities in Europe and in Britain. It's good for universities. There are no downsides. The only problem, of course, is freedom of movement has not been reinstated, so the UK will be at a disadvantage in respect to other European countries. But perhaps that can be overcome at some later stage. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.